Hello everyone and welcome to this exchange. The title of this exchange is Socially Responsible Public Procurement, How to Move Forward as a Sector. It will last approximately for an hour, and during this time there's perfect opportunity to ask any questions. Thank you for registering, and thanks also to our speakers today. We have Jim Crenshaw from People and Planet, Emma Nicholson from EAUC, and Karen Bowman from the University of Edinburgh. My name's Emma, and I'm the Member Events and Communities Officer here at the EAUC. As you know, the EAUC delivered the Sustainability Exchange, which was initially a funded project from HEPKI and led by Staffordshire University. So what are exchanges? Exchanges are free lunchtime webinars on a range of sustainability topics. Anyone can present them, so just get in touch with us at sustainabilityexchange@eauc.org.uk or myself if this is something of interest to you. So there's just a little bit of housekeeping to go over. I'm hoping that everyone can hear okay. I have muted you all just to avoid background noise so that you can hear as clearly as possible during the exchange. If you have any issues hearing at any point, could you please use the chat box down to your right on the screen just to send me a message saying so. Hopefully most of you have working microphones. Don't worry if you don't, as you will still have the opportunity to ask any questions during and after the presentations. If you do have any questions during the presentations, please type them into the chat box on the bottom right of your screen, either directly to the specific speaker you intend to ask your question to everyone, or to myself, which is EAUC. You will also be sent a short survey after this exchange webinar to gain your feedback. Please, if you could take time to do that, that'd be great because it helps us to improve future exchanges. Okay, so that's all from me now, and I'm going to pass over to Jim. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for that, Emma. Hi, welcome everybody to the webinar. Thanks everybody for making time in your schedules to come to this. I'm actually going to start off before we introduce the webinar, just by hearing from participants and delegates and sort of who you are and what university or college that you're from and why you're interested in this subject. So I think the easiest way is just to have a go-round of everybody and just hear from everybody in turn. And some of you, I don't have your names here, I've just got call-in user 10. So I'm going to start off and just going through you each in turn, and then I'll pass the presenter ball to you, so you'll be able to speak. So we'll start off with whoever is call-in user 10. So I'll just try and unmute that. Yeah. Hello, does one of the people calling in on the phones want to introduce themselves? Okay. Okay, so maybe somebody on the phone either doesn't want to or is unable to introduce themselves. And there's two phone call-in users. Do either of you want to say who you are and where you're from?
Hello, Jim. Can you hear me? Hi, it's Chris
Yep.
Larkins at Heriot-Watt University here.
Hi.
Hi, Jim. Yeah, I'm the Environment and Energy Manager at the university. I just started at the tail end of last year, and I suppose I was just really interested to learn a little bit about kind of best practice in this area.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll move on to Kate. We have Kate on the line.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Kate Fitzpatrick. I'm the Environment Manager at SRUC, which is Scotland's Rural College, and pretty much the same as previous caller. I only started in December, so this is just for a bit of background.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kate. Okay, and now we'll go to Rachel, University of Gloucestershire.
Hi, can you hear me, Jim?
Yep.
Hi, so I'm the Green Impact Coordinator at the University of Gloucestershire Students' Union. So I'm working as part of the Green Team, which is an NUS Students' Green Fund project. And currently at the Students' Union, we don't have any sustainable procurement policy, so this is just something I'm interested in learning about and seeing whether we can implement something here.
Great, thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks.
And Sabine? Are you there, Sabine?
Yes, hello. I'm Sustainable Procurement Advisor at Manchester Metropolitan University. So this is of interest to me.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sabine. Okay, and is there anyone else we've missed that wants to jump in and introduce themselves? Okay, well, in that case, and there's somebody called Trudy here. Does Trudy want to introduce themselves? Okay, maybe the microphone's not working in that case. So welcome, Trudy, as well, anyway. Okay, so to continue with the webinar, so this is a webinar about a side of sustainability that isn't always preeminent in the FE and HE sector, but is nonetheless very important and is a very growing one, which is socially responsible public procurement. And what that means is institutions using their very large spending power to influence the social conditions in their supply chains in different ways. We're going to particularly focus on labour rights in the global supply chains, particularly focusing on products like garments, IT, stone, food. A lot of this work in universities and colleges has come out of the recognition that whilst many universities and colleges have adopted Fairtrade status and have made really good progress on that, there are a lot of other things that they're buying and a lot of other things that they could be doing to improve conditions in other industries that aren't covered by that. And the conditions that you see in some of the suppliers of universities are very worrying. Workers can face issues like the suppression of trade unions, long hours, health and safety problems, poverty wages, and even abuse. So I just want to set the scene a little bit, and I'll start off with the UK. I think you might say that there's been a little bit of a hiatus in the sector on the socially responsible side of public procurement. I think perhaps its heyday was in 2006 to 2009. The UK government published a document called Procuring the Future, and it wanted at the time for the UK to lead Europe in sustainable procurement by 2009. And lots of progress was made, initiatives in HE and FE, such as promoting poverty-aware procurement on campus, which is an EAUC initiative, and the Sustainable Procurement Centre of Excellence really improved the performance of the sector on both social and green sides of procurement. And some members of the sector are moving ahead individually very fast with this. There are, for example, 12 to 13 universities that have joined the Worker Rights Consortium, which aims to improve conditions for garments workers, and Edinburgh, we'll hear from later, has also joined Electronics Watch, which is a project that I'll introduce to you on this call. I want to also introduce some of the good practice from around Europe, which probably people will be less familiar with. Not all of this good practice is I'm sorry, I'll just run through the agenda quickly just to set the scene. So yeah, this is the first section where I'm going to talk about best practice from around Europe. And then the rest of the presentation we'll hear from EAUC, their cysteine initiative, and how they're trying to work collaboratively to improve outcomes of socially responsible procurement through that. We're going to talk about Electronics Watch, which is a collaborative project to use public buying across Europe to improve conditions in the electronics industry. We're going to hear from Edinburgh, who have been very much leaders in socially responsible public procurement. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A about everything that we've had, and we'll then have a discussion about what people are doing on socially responsible public procurement that are here on the call, what lessons we've learned, and what the barriers are and how we can overcome them. So sorry, I skipped that. So I'm just going to move on to, as I said, some parts of SRPP, for short, best practice that perhaps people won't be very familiar with. If you're starting out on this road, as it sounds like quite a few of you are, fantastic resources can be found from a project called the Landmark Project, which is funded by the European Commission. And they've got 3 reports that have examples of some amazing practice in socially responsible public procurement in Europe. The examples aren't from the FIHI sector, but I think they apply very much to it. So I'll just introduce some of these. I'll start off with Malmö in Sweden. Some of you might know about this. So Malmö is a city with about 300,000 residents, and it buys products worth about 5 billion euros a year, and it's got a really large emphasis on sustainability in the city's strategy, and they've made a lot of progress on sustainable construction, organic food, and then in 2007 they started to look at labour rights in supply chains in products like flowers, tea, coffee, bananas and textiles. And they developed a common code of conduct in 2011, which got a political sign-off from, I think it was something like 40 municipalities across Sweden, which was a common code of conduct they all shared. So they started to be able to send a common message to the market, and the code of conduct was based around the ILO core conventions on labour rights. So every single supplier of the Swedish sort of local authority sector was hearing the same message, and what they also did was to combine costs, and so they commissioned NGOs and had really good expertise, and also social auditing firms to go in and hold their suppliers to account, to actually look at factories, even though they're far away and too expensive to do on an individual basis, and find out what's going on and whether the supplier's claims are true. And in fact, in 2011, they found abuses at a factory supplying them with IT. It was a very famous case. And they were able to put pressure on their suppliers to such an extent, because they represented such a large amount of spending collaboratively, that they could actually resolve the issues in that factory, which is quite an amazing thing, I think. Another example, which is quite similar, is Oslo in Norway. They wanted also to be a socially responsible authority, and so they tendered for a compliance firm to do compliance work on all of their high-risk products, to look at the factories, to find out what's going on, and to look at the suppliers and to look at their policies as well. And then, whilst they spent about 120,000 euros over 2 years on this, they then asked all other Norwegian public institutions to participate in it. And I think that in the end 60 other authorities joined, meaning that the cost to each was negligible, but they could, between them, make a real impact on those supply chains. And again, they required their suppliers to adhere to the United Nations Global Compact, which includes human rights, labour, environmental and anti-corruption standards, and to the ILO core conventions. The final example I'll share with you is from Barcelona. So in June 2012, representatives from Barcelona City Council, Barcelona Provincial Council and the government also of Catalonia participated in a monthly working group on socially responsible public procurement. And the aim of that was to drive the introduction of social criteria into tenders of textiles and electronics productions of the three administrations. And they've been able to use that working group as a space to use their combined leverage to influence the market, to establish common standards, and also just to share knowledge and learning. So I think some of the lessons I want to draw out of this best practice going on around Europe, you can see that they're all lessons of collaboration. They're all examples of collaboration. It's really difficult as an individual university, say for example, to influence huge companies in trying to improve the conditions for workers and their supply chains. But in each of these cases, they found innovative ways to share costs, to share learning, and to collaborate and join up their purchasing power across a lot of different local authorities, but equally you could do it for universities in order to influence the industry much easier, and it also just makes it much less work for other people. So you could do it across a sector, across a geography, or across different public sectors. But collaboration is very important, I think. More lessons that came out was that verification of what your suppliers are telling you is really difficult. These things are going on in China or other countries, in another part of the world, and public sector organisations don't have the money themselves to address that. They have, in all of these cases, found innovative ways to share the cost of verification between them. Another thing that the Malmo did was work with NGOs, which is quite an unusual thing to do, but really important because NGOs are very close to the ground and know about the issues that are going on. Yeah, so I think I'll stop there with these best practice examples. So I hope that you can see from them that while this might seem challenging and you think, well, how can we do something like that, there is lots of amazing stuff going on around Europe, and it's becoming more and more common now. Whilst it's a challenge, it is a very worthwhile thing that you can achieve amazing results at. Okay, so we've not got much time, so I'm going to pass on now to Emma from APUC, who's going to share a really great example of collaboration from our own sector with her cysteine initiative. So let me try and pass it over to her.
Hi everyone, thanks Jim, thanks for that. Hopefully you can all hear me. If you can't, please just let me know in the chat box at the bottom there. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about a project that APUC is running called cysteine. So it'll only take a few minutes and I'll just hopefully do a bit of scene setting. But thanks first to Jim for really putting forward the case for collaboration and hopefully the benefits that we can get from working together on that. So just to let you know, APUC is the Centre of Expertise in Scotland for the universities and colleges, and we carry out collaborative procurement. We do other services such as shared services with procurement staff and institutions, and we do a lot of systems support. And one of the systems that we have in place is a contract database called Hunter. And this is a particularly useful tool that I'm going to tell you a little bit about further on in the presentation, and hopefully you'll understand why. So just to kind of briefly give you an overview of what it is we're doing. cysteine is a collaborative project. We want to try and understand the social, ethical, environmental and economic standards of our suppliers and hopefully their suppliers as well. We've got a wide range of parties represented in our working group. And we're ultimately using actual live data to drive forward where we want to look at and to identify where we need to be looking at and considering and understanding our supply chain better. ultimately, the big benefit of this is just one supplier site assessment. We're trying to eliminate duplication of effort and make things easier for suppliers, ultimately, also because it's free for suppliers, there's no cost for them. And we're trying to be able to gather and get a better oversight of what's happening in our supply chains. So why did this all come about? Well, quite a lot of different drivers really into this. And one of the big drivers here really is student voice. Students have had a big pressure on institutions. As Jim mentioned, quite a few have joined Workers' Rights Consortium. So there was a big driver there for quite a few of our institutions to join that group. But ultimately, for our sector, from the institution side, not so much the student side, there isn't a great deal of spend on garments in particular. We spend a lot of money on other things, IT being one, but furniture, estates. There's a whole raft of different things. So we needed something that addressed this in a much wider scope than just garments as it was at that time. Obviously, we now have Electronics Watch, which is great because that focuses on the IT side. But again, that's just two categories of numerous. So we were looking for something that could encompass and look at everything in a much wider scope. And also, organisations themselves are starting to recognise that they needed to do lead the way, and you know, the institutions are getting much more pressure from top down, really, to start driving for a better sustainable practice. So we've put together a working group, and it's a very wide-ranging working group where it's a no-hold-barred. We have a whole raft of different members currently, from universities, which includes Edinburgh, Aberdeen, and Glasgow School of Art, and most recently our Dundee and Stirling are our newest members. We've also got procurement staff from those institutions and sustainability stroke environmental sort of staff from those institutions. We've got student representatives from those institutions, and we've also got students that are part of People and Planet and NUS on the groups. And we also have EAUC on the working group, and we work with People and Planet. We work directly with Jim, and we're also, you know, obviously looking at ways we can collaborate on things like Electronics Watch as well. The group has everybody has an equal say, and it's very much let's work together and try and pull this all together and work out what our aims are. The group has pulled together a code of conduct, which covers the 4 areas: social, ethical, economic, and environmental. And it addresses things, the ILO core conventions and the UN Global Compact, and it's seen as a minimum standard of where we want our supply base to be. And this is available on our website for any of our institutions to download and use and put into tenders, and to use as their minimum standard, along with our sustainability policy that's also worded on there in case any institution wants to take that and use that as their basis. So, as I mentioned, I mean, this is quite a wide-reaching code of conduct, and it's deliberately so because we want it to suit all of the categories that we have. It's, as much as it's a minimum standard, it's not easy to put this as a minimum standard in public sector tendering. We're very limited on what we can actually put forward in the tender process. So whilst we're trying to address that and word things in as best a way as we can to improve standards up front in tenders, this is seen as an opportunity to really drive things forward at the contract management stage. So this is why it links very well with our Hunter contract database, because these are actual live contracts, and this is what we're using to really push the project forward. So Hunter is a database, it's a system that EPUC has, and it's used UK-wide in this sector. All of the collaborative consortia use it, as well as individual institutions in Scotland and certain other public sector bodies as well. So we have an opportunity where we can see and track live spend sector-wide, and it's a very significant opportunity, really, and it gives us that ability to use a collaborative code of conduct with collaborative spend data, and therefore put that collaborative pressure on suppliers. It gives us a chance to identify where we're spending money, who we're spending money with, and what we're spending it on. We can then combine that with the risk and influence and scope analysis and really start to target our supply base.
It's a significant amount of spend that we track, and it's actually quite scary almost how limited it is that we spend that, who we spend that with. It's a very small number of suppliers that there's a large number of spend with. So we have hopefully a good opportunity for some influence and pressure on suppliers there. Now the actual database, the cysteine database, the data is pushed through from Hunter, so it lists all the agreements that the whole sector has. It's one cysteine file for every supplier, so no matter how many agreements a supplier has on Hunter, how many different institutions, they only have one site file on cysteine. They only have to fill a questionnaire out once. It's a very straightforward questionnaire, it's a self-certifying system, and it allows the supplier the opportunity to declare where they're at, but also to see how they could learn and improve and get to a better level. It's, as I mentioned before, it's free for suppliers, so there's no financial impact there. We can also then compare publicly. You can see on a results page, and you can see for a category or a supplier or a agreement, you can see different scores and where suppliers are on that level. And it allows us also, we've got added functionality in there where a supplier can tell us a bit about their supply chain, and we can start to see where in the world suppliers are contracting. We can start to identify the risks, and we can also ask and invite those sub-suppliers to do this as well. So we're starting to improve all our knowledge of our supply chain. So we've really got quite a large project here ongoing. We're in what we call phase 2 at the moment. So we are refining our questions. We are putting things like the search functionality, the results functionality onto the website. And then we will start to move towards early supplier testing, and we're aiming for a launch in late summer 2014. It's absolutely not a problem for anyone, any of other institutions that want to join in and get involved. That's not a problem. It can be procurement staff, sustainability staff, students. Anyone that wants to get involved can do. Our working group is constantly evolving and growing. So please just contact me if you want to do that. And we have on our website our sustainability policy and the code of conduct are on there with a little bit of information about the Cysteine project as well. So it's all there for any institution that wants to read that or start to use it if they want to do so. So that's just a little bit about Cysteine, and I'm now going to hand back over to Jim so that he can tell you a bit about the Electronics Watch project.
Okay, thanks for that, Emma. Right, yeah, so I'm going to move swiftly on to another example of how to collaborate around socially responsible public procurement. So I'm going to introduce to you the Electronics Watch project. What this project is about is students in the People and Planet Network were very concerned. They've been campaigning on labour rights in the clothing industry for years, and also on using university spending to improve that situation. And conditions in the electronics industry were just as bad. And that's being led by pressure on downwards pressure on prices by brands and the insistence on short lead times, which leads to huge uses of temporary labour, repression of unions, long hours, and dangerous conditions. And so our network said, we want us to campaign on the electronics industry, and we thought, how can we do that? And the response that we found sort of was based on what we saw when we saw the electronics industry. So, I mean, these pictures here are an example of some of the issues in the industry. You can see in the top picture a quite incredible scene where 140 workers at Foxconn factory, which supplies Apple but also supplies HP and Dell, threatening to jump off the roof of the factory in a joint suicide in protest against the conditions that they were facing there. And so we looked at this industry and we realized that it's actually a very concentrated industry. It's only mainly in some regions of the world. The brands in the industry are using the same factories as each other, and these factories are very geographically concentrated. And the public sector is one of the biggest buyers of this industry. The public sector in Europe spent 94 billion in the last year on electronics ICT. UK spent 18 billion euros on ICT, making it one of the biggest spenders. And these public sector spenders are also spending on the same few brands. So in theory, you could have a massive ability to influence that market, to change conditions right down to the factory level. And the public sector is aware of this, I think, and often universities might have ethical procurement policies. It might be embedded in the sustainability policy generally, and they have the ability to combine their spending power, but generally they don't. They also can find ways of trying to verify whether the claims that their suppliers make are true, but usually that isn't really happening. So these are the missing pieces, I think, joining together, doing something collaboratively to use public sector spending power to address these issues in the industry, and actually then going and monitoring factories, which is something that public sector bodies, like especially universities and colleges, just can't do on their own. And that's how Electronics Watch came about. So the point of Electronics Watch is it's going to be a coalition of about 60 public sector organisations from around Europe that will all put common conditions in their contracts with suppliers, will share information, and then Electronics Watch will work with, I'll just show you this on the next slide. Electronics Watch will actually work with groups who monitor factories. They're NGOs and community service organisations in the regions of electronics production, and we will go to those factories and we'll tie these groups together into a network that is capable of actually holding suppliers accountable. So when they're telling the public sector that they're not violating workers' rights, we can find out whether that is actually true or not. And then if that is the case, then 60 public sector organisations can all say that their contracts have been breached at the same time and that the company needs to remediate it. So it's a potentially very, very powerful tool to influence the industry through collaboration. So in that sense, Electronics Watch is the eyes and the ears of the public sector on the ground. And so it can monitor and verify in a way that a single university or even a group of universities couldn't really do. It's going beyond social auditing, because every part of the monitoring system of Electronics Watch is community service organisations and NGOs that are based in those countries that know what is going on for workers, not sort of helicoptered in social auditors, commercial social auditors, because that model has been absolutely failing for years. And in fact, the factory that collapsed in Bangladesh was audited as fine just weeks before it collapsed. So we wanted to move on from that. And it enables a collaboration to go beyond even just HE and FE. It's across Europe and it's across public sectors. So we're developing tools for public sector organisations that they can all use, questionnaires for suppliers, contract provisions that are legally robust, and a database where they can share information about what's going on, and then they can share the costs of monitoring through this organisation. So this is the structure of Electronics Watch. So Electronics Watch has been funded by the European Commission. It has, and these are the staff that Electronics Watch will have from 2015. It'll have a head office in Europe to try and work with its public sector affiliate members and then it will have field staff in the regions for electronics production who will work with a network of about 20 monitors, which are from these kind of civil society organisations. These are some of the tools that Electronics Watch supplies for its public sector affiliate members. So a common code of conduct that they can all use to send a common message to the market, common contractual clauses that can be cascaded down to suppliers, and protocols for how things need to be addressed when we find out issues. And then Electronics Watch is not just doing auditing, it's actually going into those factories and over a long 1 year, 2 year program trying to improve them after issues come up, working with workers in those factories. So how you can get involved in that if you're interested. We have an advisory group, and it's quite incredible the amount of enthusiasm that we've seen so far for the project. We've got about 50 organisations already in our advisory group, and a couple more have asked me in the last couple of days. And it's made up of public sector buyers, civil society, and then the actual organisations that monitor. So if any of you are interested in joining that and advising the project as it is scoped throughout 2014, then please do. In 2014, you can also affiliate to Electronics Watch, as some organisations, including University of Edinburgh, are now starting to do, and it's free in 2014. You can therefore become a founding member, which means you'll be recognised as one of the first 25 across Europe that join the organisation, and then you'll get free support from us to put in place the policies and procedures that you need to start monitoring in 2015. So the benefits of getting involved is that you can manage risk to your brand and risk to workers, improve supply chains, and share the costs, share leverage, and share the cost of verification. So I think that's my last slide. So sorry, this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour through that, but there'll be space for questions at the end of Karen's section. So now I'm going to pass on to an individual institution that's really been a leader in socially responsible public procurement, particularly in this field of labour rights. So we're going to hear from Karen Bowman from the University of Edinburgh.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thanks to Emma too. I'm the Director of Procurement at the University, and I also chair our Fairtrade steering group, and that is really why we've got involved in this wider issue, working in collaboration with Jim and Emma. However, the University of Edinburgh itself is a really large organisation. It's actually grown 30% in the last 10 years, and we're now a turnover of £750 million a year, and we've got 42,500 people in the university. So we're actually, for our Scottish colleagues, we're a bigger organisation in terms of people than the town of Stirling, and a little bit smaller than Inverness. The University of Edinburgh itself has had a long-standing record of environmental and social responsibility, and we have had a published strategy since 2010. And I'm very pleased to say that procurement, as well as environmental colleagues, have been at the centre of planning this strategy. So we now have a Director of Social Responsibility and Sustainability, Dave Gorman, who's only been in the university about 9 months, but he has made this statement that we want to become the world's first socially responsible university. And he recognised that this means we need to consider our impact not only in our investments, which a lot of members of the university are concerned about, where is the university investing its endowment money or its own money, but also that we need to think about what we're doing in our purchasing, because you'll probably realise that investment money is capital and purchasing is revenue. And in this university, we spend almost £200 million a year on goods and services and buildings. So it's great that social responsibility and sustainability and procurement are all working together in our university. And the other thing that's really important is that this has a strategic influence and also listens to the student voice. Our students elect a rector, staff have a vote in that as well, and for many years the rector of Edinburgh University has been someone who has come up through the People and Planet route as interested in environmental and social matters. The group that steers the strategy is called our Sustainability and Environmental Advisory Group. It has representatives from all parts of the university, including students, and it's chaired by a senior vice principal, which is right next to the head of the university, the principal and vice chancellor. So we have published our document, which came out in 2010, but prior to that, we have always worked in this area with our students, because in 2004, our Students' Union had the biggest turnout ever for a vote and voted to become a Fairtrade university. You'll notice on the slide there's the word Fairtrade, one word, and two words. One word is, you probably all know, the name of the Fairtrade labelling organisation and Fairtrade Foundation UK. And as Jim indicated earlier, their scheme covers a lot of specific products helping producers in what's now known as the South or the Third World to get a fair price for their goods and to be able to enjoy social and environmental improvements. But our university has taken the view that that's not enough. As we've heard already, there's a huge amount of impact from our purchasing in all kinds of aspects. Trade in the world is not fair, and therefore we need to think about how can we influence that. So the Staff Student Steering Group has been running since 2004 with Edinburgh University Students Association, EAUC, and People and Planet members. And so it's been great for me as a Director of Procurement to have a really close connection. We meet every month during the main part of the academic year, and we talk about topics not just to do with holding events to celebrate fair trade products, but actually the wider issues. And it was through that we took the decision in 2012 to join the Workers' Rights Consortium, which you've heard about already in this presentation. It's an American consortium of universities who deal with licensed clothing, and so for Edinburgh to join, we had to investigate how does that fit the aspirations of that we want to achieve, but how does it fit with the EU procurement law that we have to abide by. So that was something we had to deal with, and we amended the terms of the affiliation, and we joined the Workers' Rights Consortium. And what that's done for us is it's helped us to know what's actually happening in the factories around the world where products are made. Now, these may be products we buy as a university, but actually most of them are products that our students buy. Our students will spend a lot more money on garments and clothing over a lifetime of their 4 years at university than our institution spends. And I did say to students at the time we joined this, if there was another similar operation for electronics, we could have more impact, because we actually spend in our University of Edinburgh £25 million a year on ICT. And therefore, the workers who are affected by our purchasing will be significantly more, and the benefits of working together on their rights will be greater than perhaps with the Workers' Rights Consortium. We also, as Emma has mentioned, joined as early founder members of the EAUC cysteine project. We're very keen to collaborate with others. We've been part of the groups that Jim has mentioned as well, the procurement poverty awareness on campus, and also the UK collaboration on sustainable procurement in higher education. And we really want to be able to use the leverage, but also to learn from each other and work together. And you've heard from Emma how exciting that project is to try and look across all our purchasing, all our supply chains, with a common message to the market that these things matter to us. And we have just joined the Electronics Watch, as Jim has said. And we think this is a really exciting opportunity, because in the European Union we're all having to adhere to the same procurement law, which, as Emma mentioned, is not that easy to apply in terms of ensuring social responsibility is taken into account in your supply chain. But the good news is it's getting easier, and both the new Scottish law, which is going through the Scottish Parliament at the moment, the Procurement Reform Bill, and also the European directives, which have just been published in the EU and will come into law in the UK and Scotland soon. These laws now actually specifically talk about sustainability and talk about it in terms of environmental, economic and social. So this is a really encouraging time to be joining these activities. So just to focus again on electronics, I would imagine for most of you on the call, electronics will be a major purchase in your institutions, and also your colleagues, or at least your students, if not your colleagues, will be interested in the social impact of your purchasing. So we have joined as a founder member, and we would encourage as many participants in this project so that it has a benefit to all institutions, all buyers and all workers over time. And as we already heard, the opportunity is great if we work together. It's interesting to note that collaboration on ICT procurement is one of the things that's been going UK-wide, certainly for at least 15, if not maybe 20 years, through buying from framework agreements for computers, for accessories and so on. And so we have already been collaborating, and therefore it's not a new idea to work together on this element. And as Jim already said, it's being funded by the EU, so it will have to take account of public procurement. So as I've mentioned, the University of Edinburgh spends a lot of money on procurement. We believe we can influence about 198 million over a year. ICT is about 13% of what we do, and our aim is to get more informed so that we can actually adhere to our own policies. And we're going to be using different services from Electronics Watch. We're going to be educating our staff, our students and our suppliers, and collaborating with others in the sector, as you've heard. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the other members on the call their comments and what they're doing in their own institutions. Thank you. I'll hand now back to Jim.
Okay. Am I back on? Yeah, okay, so thanks for that, Karen. Okay, so thanks for that, Karen. Now we're going to hear from the delegates on the call. I know this will, often people on this call might be at an early stage in socially responsible public procurement, or others might have been doing it for a while, because everyone was welcome to this call, and a lot of people are at an early stage. First of all, actually, before that, I'm just going to take any questions that we might have for a few minutes. If you've got any questions, could you type them into the message box? I'll just give you a minute just to type them into the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and you can just send them either to everyone or to the EAUC host. We'll see if you've got any questions on any of the stuff that we've covered. Okay, so far I haven't got any questions, but if others come up in our remaining time, then just feel free to type them into the chat. And if we don't get a chance to respond to all of your questions this time, you can always contact us afterwards, or ask a question now and we'll contact you afterwards. Okay, I'm going to move on to hear from the delegates. So I think I'm going to amalgamate the two questions, really. My first question for you is what delegates are doing on socially responsible public procurement, and any lessons you've learned from that. And the second question, which you may want to address, is what are the barriers to moving further with SRPP at your institution? and how these might be overcome. So I think I'm just going to do a go round. You don't have to say anything if you don't have anything to say, but it would be nice to if people could contribute. So I'm just going to call you all in turn. So could we start off with Chris Larkins?
Hello, hi Jim. Yeah,
Hi.
first of all, just want to say thanks very much for a very informative set of presentations. That was very useful, particularly in my position that I am new to the sector, and in honesty, and relatively new to the university, and therefore I started to work with our procurement section in really developing our next sustainable development plan for the university, and I'm aware of some of the activity that's ongoing in relation to sustainable procurement, socially responsible procurement specifically. I'm not clear on exactly the work streams, if you like, that are ongoing at the moment, so it's an area I need to investigate with procurement in more detail. That said, it's been very interesting today to hear some of the tools, the collaborative ventures and so on that we may be able to participate within. So certainly I'll be looking to discuss things like the cysteine group and potentially electronics watch, for example, with my colleagues in procurement. So unfortunately I can't give you a great deal in relation specifically to the two questions you've raised. But really just to say that that's been very useful in relation to providing some background and hopefully some direction to our activity going forward. But thanks very much.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Chris. That's really helpful. And I'm just going to work my way down the list. And the next one is Kate. There's two Kates. This is the non-Kate Murray Kate.
Hi. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much going to echo what Chris is saying. This has been quite an insightful webinar, and it gives me a lot to go and speak to our procurement team about, and sort of how we're going to go forward with this. And I'm sorry, I'm dying with the cold, and my head is like cotton wool. I can't really think, but yeah, it's given a lot of food for thought, this webinar.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Kate. And okay, going to move on to Kate Murray. We can't hear you, Kate Murray. Are you there? I think there's something wrong with the microphone. Oh, okay, we'll move on. Okay, Rachel from University of Gloucestershire, SU.
Hi, yeah, just to echo again what Kate and Chris have said, it's been really useful to get an idea of the kind of things that are going on, and we're just at such early stage that I'll just be discussing those ideas with colleagues in procurement. But thank you very much.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that, Rachel. Okay, Sabine.
Yeah. We've got a sustainable procurement policy and have drafted a sustainable procurement strategy. And at the moment we're looking into a supplier code of conduct. We've drafted one, and we are going to include that code of conduct in contracts. Oh. Hello?
Hello, yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, the plan is to include the code of conduct into contracts with our high-risk suppliers at the start, and then yeah, in all contracts in the future.
Okay, that's great. Well, thanks for that. That's really interesting. Okay, and now we'll move on to Trudy. Are you around, Trudy? Can't hear anything. I don't know if you want to type anything in. Maybe your microphone isn't Isn't working? Okay, I can't see anything from Trudy. All right, so the next question is, looking at your own institutions, does anybody have anything to say about the barriers that they think they might face to implementing more socially responsible public procurement? Because presumably there are some barriers, and it'd be very interesting to know what they are. If anybody wants to comment on this, could they just type something into the chat box so that I can come to you? Okay, well maybe it's a bit early days for people to have assessed what the barriers might be at their institutions. We just heard a comment from Karen. Oh, okay. Also, we've got one from Karen to say, is one of the barriers procurement and environmental people working together? And that's an interesting one. We've got one from Sabine, the purchasing consortium not supportive of the worker rights consortium. Yeah, that's helpful. Does anybody else have any other barriers? And feel free if anybody's got any suggestions to those concerns, to address those concerns. Okay, Karen and Emma both want to respond to Sabine.
Will I go first? So,
sure.
It's Karen here. Yes, I think one of the challenges we have with collaborative procurement is if one or a few institutions want to influence a contract that's been let by a purchasing consortium, and the purchasing consortium could have 100 members, but only one or two are asking for something specific. I know in our case, the Workers' Rights Consortium membership investigation began at a time when a number of individual institutions were being approached by students about this. And what we did was one of our procurement managers liaised with the procurement manager at EAUC, who liaised with the procurement point of contact at the consortium who led the framework agreement. And although the framework agreement for garments in this case included terms for the International Labour Organization standards, there was a reluctance to add additional obligations after the award of contract on Workers' Rights Consortium. So we took the view that it was something that we wanted to do. It had been approved by our Fairtrade steering group and our Sustainability and Environmental Advisory group, and so we decided to join as an institution rather than simply to lobby a particular purchasing consortium on this project. And I think the difference in what's happening now, particularly with EAUC Cysteine project and with the electronics watch work, that we're actually recognising that lobbying after a contract's too late. We really should be thinking about what we want from our suppliers, from our codes of conduct as early as possible. And so I think it may be that the purchasing consortium doesn't have the resources to pursue it, or they're at a stage in their procurement where they can't introduce it at a late stage. I don't know if that's helpful at all to Sabine, but that's a little bit of our experience.
Okay, I'm sorry, Emma. We've come to the end of the session, so I'm just going to have to wrap it up now. But perhaps Emma could contact Sabine, or Sabine can contact Emma if you've got any more questions, because I'm sure she's got a lot to add on that. Okay, so yeah, thanks everybody for coming to this session today. I hope it's been useful and informative to you all. I suppose the take-home message from us is that you're not alone, and whilst these things can seem challenging, there are initiatives and schemes that are trying to make it easy for you through using collaboration across the sector and even across Europe, so that you can really start to make a dent on these things and not struggle along alone at an individual institution, but work together with others. And I think through working together, we can really start to make a real difference and a dent on these things. So thanks everyone that has come along to make a start on that agenda. I just want to add a quick message from Karen, and that Karen Bowman said that there's a sustainable procurement topic support network at EAUC, which combines procurement and environmental stroke sustainability people to discuss this further. So if people are interested in or have more questions, then please do go along to that. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end. So thanks everybody for coming along. Emma from EAUC, do I pass it back to you now, or do we just...
Hello, yes please, yeah, brilliant.
Okay, so over to you.
Thanks everyone, thanks to our delegates for attending today, and especially thanks to Jim, Emma and Karen for spending the time to discuss these opportunities with you, and hopefully you have found it useful, and I'm sure you have, as I found it very interesting myself. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that this webinar has been recorded, and it will be made available on the Sustainability Exchange later on, and I will send you the link to that. As it was an exchange webinar, it's free to anyone, it's not just EAUC members, so please feel free to pass that on to anybody else. Again, thank you very much to our speakers, and thanks for attending, and I'll see you all on the next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.